My name is Emily Davis,
I'm Carolina Ramos.
And I am Jessica Berthelot.
and today we're going to be talking about the Casl 2, which is the Comprehensive Assessment of Spoken Language. So to give you a brief overview, the author is Elizabeth Woolfolk. It was created in 2017, so pretty recent. The age range is from 3 years to 21 years, so pretty broad. And it's basically an in-depth evaluation of individuals' oral language skills, and there are 14 subtests, and they all measure specific oral language skills, and the cost is around $670, so a little pricey. So this is a picture of one of the Casl tests, and it targets the lexical and semantic side. And as you can see, there's tabs at the bottom. So if I were, wanting to test the receptive vocabulary or antonyms, I would just flip to that tab to start. This is another test easel, and this targets the superlinguistic and pragmatic test. And then this is the third and final one, which targets syntax. So the definition is that it helps measure oral language processing skills of comprehension and expression across 4 different categories, and those are the ones that I just mentioned: semantic, syntax, superlinguistic, and pragmatics. So this is a picture we got straight from the book, and it shows you the 14 different tests, the age ranges that they all fall under, the different categories, as well as the test easel you can find, and then this just gives you a small definition of what each of them do. So as you can see, it's really broad and targets a lot of different skills that we're assessing on the child, and you're going to be able to get a pretty broad understanding of how good or bad their language is, where they fall in between.
All right, so for the materials of the Casl. So it obviously contains a manual. It contains information about administering, scoring, and interpreting the Casl. It provides information about reliability, validity, and psychometrics. The Casl does have a very high reliability and validity, which means if I assess the test, or administer the test, and Emily administers the test, we're both gonna get about approximately the same results if we test the same child. So that speaks a lot for a test. Normative scoring, and it has the normative scoring tables. There are 3 Casl 2 test easels, just like Emily showed us previously. It is organized by a category of linguistic structures measured in each test. So test 1 contains all of the lexical and semantics portion. Test 2 contains all of the syntax. Test 3 contains all of the superlinguistic tests and the pragmatic language test. There are 2 Casl 2 record forms. The first one is a comprehensive record form, and it contains all 14 tests and is used for ages 3 to 21. The second record forms includes the preschool record form, and it contains 10 tests that can be used with children ages 3 to 6 years. So for the administration of the Casl 2, it is individually administered. Examiner reads items aloud as the examinee responds by speaking or pointing. And the administration of this assessment takes approximately 30 to 45 minutes for children ages 3 to 6 years, and approximately 45 to 60 minutes for ages 7 to 21 years. Note, this is the approximate time for the core test. This does not include subtests to be given. So as you can see, this is a pretty lengthy test, especially if you're assessing or administering it to younger kids. The kids they can get a little annoyed, or you might not be easy for you to assess kids that are younger. The testing room should be free of distractions with a table and 2 chairs. So administering the Casl, here is some examples that we got from the actual Casl 2. So first, we introduce the test to the examinee with a brief statement. For example, I'm going to ask you some questions about word and language. Some of the questions have pictures. For some questions, you will tell me your answers. On others, you may point to the picture for your answers. Please try your best on all questions. Second, we will find the tab on the test easel that corresponds to the selected test and find the corresponding page in the record form to record and score the examinee's responses. Third, we will read aloud the test examples in the test easel for the examinee's age and follow the instructions for correct and incorrect responses. And four, we will proceed to the start item appropriate for the examinee's age as given in the test easel and in the record form. So a little bit more about the scoring the Casl. So scoring the Casl can be a little complicated since it does have a lot of subtests, but each subtest has its own scoring, and we take those scores and then add them and we get our final score. So each test can be scored separately and can be combined to yield to reflect summary index scores that represents broad areas of oral language skills. 14 individual test scores and 6 index scores. General language ability, receptive language index, expressive language index, lexical, syntactic, and supralinguistic index. The norms for this assessment is based on a stratified sample of 2,394 individuals that is representative of the US population in terms of geographic region, gender, race, and social and economic status, along with current education. So here's an example of how we score the Casl in the grammar section or grammar portion of the test. So the child receives 0 points if they are unable to identify a sentence that is grammatically correct or incorrect. They get 1 point if they are able to identify that the sentence is grammatically correct or incorrect, but does not successfully correct the sentence if it is incorrect. And they get 2 points, which is the maximum amount of points if the examinee identifies that a sentence is grammatically incorrect, then successfully corrects the sentence by adding, changing, or deleting one word. Now we're going to show you guys a little clip of the Casl, someone administering the Casl.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct.
Hello. Portion of the Casl 2 to our client who is 21 years old. This test will measure comprehension of meaning of spoken word. And so I will begin. First, we're going to do some examples. Let's look at these 4 pictures. I will ask you to point to the one picture that goes best with what I say. Point to the girl. Good. Now look at these 4 pictures. Point to the little dog. Good. Now we will begin. Okay, point to amphibious. Good.
All right. So that was a good example to kind of let you guys see how it looks to administer. Some modifications. It is mentioned in the scoring record form and in the manual that, quote, alternative scoring guidelines offer criteria for scoring results with individuals who speak with African American dialect. That was really the only variation or modification that we were able to find. The Casl does not mention any other modifications allowed. Advantages of the Casl. The Casl is extremely thorough and uses more specific subtests in different language categories. And the results of using an extremely thorough assessment is that it does yield specific results for individuals. The administration of the Casl is user-friendly, as you saw in the video, and it can be organized easily. The easels are designed to give ease of instruction to the proctor during the administration of the assessment. The picture context does keep the child engaged throughout the assessment process. The proctor can easily identify the subtest and target specific areas that are desired to be addressed, as you saw with the tabs. There is also a free online scoring and reporting platform that can be used, and that platform is HIPAA compliant, so you don't have to worry about your students' information getting out. The results of the Casl can be used to identify and write specific IEP goals and objectives. That's a big one for all of you special education teachers out there. All right, and with the limitations of the Casl, okay, even though it is a very thorough and amazing test, we did find several limitations. According to several of my personal colleagues that have administered and used the Casl for deaf and hard of hearing students, time was the biggest issue here. It's just lengthy because it is so in-depth. The Casl can, take up a lot of your, if your caseload requires you to see a student and you're an itinerant teacher, the Casl can take up pretty much your entire session, maybe even 2 or 3 sessions, depending on the student and how far they get with the test. So also in doing other research online, time was the biggest factor that was mentioned with the Casl. It is also noted that some of the questions and pictures in the Casl are outdated. One example is a picture of a phone booth, and children today do not know what a phone booth is. So I think that they're working on an updated version now, but that's just, something to keep in mind. People who love the Casl seem to feel that it is more appropriate for children in grades 3 and higher. It can be given to children as young as 3rd grade and higher, sorry. It can be given to children as young as 3 years old, but many feel that it is just not appropriate for ages that young for whatever reason. The Casl is not specifically designed for children that are deaf and hard of hearing, meaning that this test was not designed specifically for deaf and hard of hearing students like some other tests would be. The easel design does not allow the proctor to see which picture has been chosen. That's why we included a video clip. Not a big deal, but if you're sitting across from your student and the easel is set up, if that student is nonverbal and they're pointing, you kind of have to get up and look and see which picture they're pointing to. So it could just like take more time or create a boundary there. So. All right, so our overall takeaway of the Casl. The Casl is an amazingly thorough assessment of language and can be used by special education teachers, speech and language pathologists, and deaf and hard of hearing teachers. This assessment gives a lot of specific information on a child's language. Again, it's very broad and can go into specifics with its subtests. You can get a lot of information from this test. However, all 3 of us agree that the Casl is just not appropriate for deaf students, okay? We do not recommend the Casl for deaf students. Hard of hearing, yes, because they can use their hearing assistive technology and they can orally, hear the test auditorily. But why do we not recommend it? Because there is no research, there's no protocols or script accommodations to be found for using the Casl with deaf students, and this includes the use of an interpreter. So there just isn't enough out there for deaf students with the Casl. It's not black and white. So that's why we would not recommend the Casl for deaf students. Again, that's just what we found overall if any of you girls want to add anything else from the takeaway.
I think you did a really good job summing that up of kind of our thinking process for this project. But yeah, like as SLPs for me and probably Emily, like it's a great resource and assessment to use for, you know, kids who have language like have trouble with language, but may not be appropriate to use on a kid who is deaf and hard of hearing. That way, in that case, we need to look for other resources and other assessments and not just, you know, stick to what we know, but also, you know, talk to our deaf and hard of hearing colleagues, and maybe they can give us a better view or something better we can use.
I agree. And I know that there are tests that are specifically designed for deaf students. The Casl is just not one of them. So here are some of the resources that we used. You can, if you guys have any questions or anything, we'd be happy to talk to anybody about it.
And I was going to add to what we had said about the takeaway too. We looked real hard to try to find ways for it to work for a child who's deaf or hard of hearing, and we didn't find anything. And we even had to call Dr. Allman and then say, like, did we choose the wrong test?
Are we missing something? Because
So, and I think that was kind of why she was totally content with us doing research on this assessment, is because now we know, and now y'all know, that this is not an assessment that we want to use for our deaf children, because it's not going to be successful. It's going to be a fail. So, yeah, but that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.